I'm going live. All right, it just froze for a second. Are we? I think we're good. All right.
Yes, Joe, we're live to the world.
Welcome to another fine episode of Command Control Power. We have a few interesting topics, hopefully interesting, we'll see, to bring to you today. And we'll encourage you right at the top to support us on Patreon. Just go to commandcontrolpower.com and click on support to go to our Patreon page. We would love to have you there, where there's lots more great content. We just posted an episode that colleagues may find interesting. It's about two colleagues here today and how sometimes we hear from similar clients and can compare notes. So I'll just tease you with that, but definitely check out more at commandcontrolpower.com and go to support to join us on Patreon.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, join Patreon and you'll get more content. And I don't know if our regular public listeners who are listening to the regular feed know that when you get a best of show, there's actually another show that we've recorded, brand new, fresh, and chock full of stuff. And of course, we're speaking a little bit more confidentially because it's a Patreon show. So there's a lot of good content there. And, if you join Patreon and you're really not getting the value out of it, you're always welcome to unsubscribe. But I think, you might be missing we may be bearing the lead by saying, oh, join Patreon. But there's a lot of good stuff there. And every time you see a best of, that if you were a Patreon subscriber, that there's a fresh show that you could listen to every single week. And we do it faithfully, except maybe, one over the New Year
holiday break.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Lots more great content there. If you, if you just can't get enough, there's lots more on Patreon. And like Jerry said, it's oftentimes, we're speaking a little bit more confidentially than we can on the public show. So we invite you to join us there.
We might even talk about Jerry's latest haircut on the Patreon.
Right.
Well, let's tease the YouTube. So every single show that we record that you listen to in the feed is unedited and live on YouTube. I say live, but you hear the unedited broadcast. So for the most part, we don't really take anything out. We're all pretty good about not saying anything that we shouldn't say. I think I don't even remember having to cut anything out, but if you want to kind of hear the complete unadulterated content, plus, like I say, you could see us, you could see handsome Sam there and handsome Joe, and Joe, he's coming back from his sister's wedding. So his haircut kind of grew out. And as Sam mentioned, I just got a fresh haircut. And also I try to do an unusual background. So here's a teaser for you guys. You know where that is? Where am I tonight?
I see grapes and things in the background. That looks like Sagrada Familia, maybe?
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Yes.
Really?
Wow. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Up in one of the spires.
Nice.
Dang,
that's
Joe.
really cool.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
That place. Yeah, that was unprompted, guys. I mean, you know what it is? It's that the shape of some of that like concrete. It's a beautiful thing. I got to see in person a number of years ago. And I don't know if they finished it. I know it's been under construction since Gaudi died. It's like just been going on and on.
It's just about done. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been back, and this is in Barcelona, of course, for some of you U.S.-bound people who haven't been there before. Barcelona, Spain, and every time I've gone back 3 times, and it had been completely different in terms of how far along they were on construction, but they really ratcheted it up this past 2 years, and I would say they are complete now. So you can go inside, and the altar's done, and they have masses there, and even if you're not of the religious persuasion, it still is fantastic, as Joe said, structure to visit if you ever go to Barcelona. So it has to be on the top 3 list of items to see in Barcelona.
Highly recommended. Yeah, it's fantastic. So, and Sam, you're at Lumen headquarters there, it looks like.
Again,
Again.
Oh, there you can see it in the background. Where am I? There, right there.
Nice. So do we have the severed Sam? Like, do you remember that you do this podcast with us on a?
Well, I go severed for the Patreon shows.
Nice. Okay. Good. Nice. Awesome.
So we're talking
Sam,
to your Audi tonight.
Yeah, we're talking to your Audi. Okay, good. Yeah, you have to join us on Patreon to talk to Sam Zinni or hear from Sam Zinni.
Exactly. You get the full scoop on what goes on down the severed floor.
Exactly. Well, Sam, you had an interesting question coming from, I guess it was probably the non-severed floor that you brought up this morning in our private chat. Basic question, but I find these tech truisms really important to revisit on a regular basis because we all just, recite this stuff like everybody knows it's true, but what we should sometimes question this stuff. So, for example, for me, it's like Apple recommends keeping 10% free space in your hard drive. We don't have hard drives anymore. So I don't know if that's still, maybe I should rephrase that. But it still seems like a fairly good idea. I don't think there's a knowledge base article about it, but that just seems to be true over the years. And even, where I'd reevaluate that is really on an 8 terabyte startup disk, you still need to keep 10% of your space free. That's like almost a terabyte. So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that needs to be evaluated for some of the sizes we're dealing with. But what did you bring up today and how did you kind of deal with that chatting with your team?
Yeah, well, I was talking on our channel, not the one that you and Jerry have on the side without me, but
Right.
Private one,
yeah,
the
that's
good one.
a little different. I'm trying to get in for ages, but we'll talk about that in the Patreon show.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think one of our clients, we had a annual meeting with them, and they were asking about upgrades that they might need because they got to put in their budget. And I was talking with Matt on my team, and I realized because I leave him to do that. He's perfectly capable. And I realized, I'm like, we didn't really talk about it. What's your threshold of aging out computers? And he was talking like 5 to 6 years. And I had an issue with that only because, like, if you look at the latest computers that support Sequoia, there are a few 2018 models on there, which is, we're 7 years out now. And what I didn't want to have happen is, like, if you go 6 years, let's say, and tell the client you're okay, then the very next year they may need to scramble because a bunch of their computers can't upgrade to the latest OS. So I thought that was a little lax in my opinion. And it got me to realize that we haven't really talked about this in a while, not like us on the show in particular, but internally as well, to figure out what is that threshold? Shouldn't we agree on this? And, there are little things like this that just get lost in the shuffle. Cause I'm a bit more aggressive on the turnover of computers. And, I want to see, I used to say 3 to 5, but I'm more like 4 to 5, I guess now. 5 is absolute max for me usually. But I was curious to what you guys thought about that, because again, it doesn't in the business environment, you're thinking about running the latest OS when you're ready to. We always talk about, like, is it at the next point update or when are you going to release it? Mm-hmm. But what I don't want to have happen is, like, you have a whole bunch of computers that are now you have to replace them all, as opposed to, like, a couple years away, you can do a couple here, a couple there, and gradually replace your fleet.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it reminds me of the story I've told before about one of my larger clients, which, for me is like a tiny speck, not even a blip on Apple's radar, or let alone some of our colleagues. But, they have, I don't know, 20 to 30 people over the years, right, on their team. And when I came in, they just had a bunch of already aging Macs, and so, like, for the first few years, it was just like constantly harping on them, like, you have to replace this. This was in the days of rotational drives and just really slow machines, underpowered hardware, outdated OSs. And so we had to be, like, really aggressive with, trying to get them to replace them. And we'd give them a list of, like you're saying, Sam, these like 10 machines need to be replaced this year. And next year you're going to have like 10 more, or maybe 15. And so then they would come back and say, it was like it was a negotiation with us, what if we replace 1 to 2 per year? And I'm like, doing the math, and I'm like, okay, well, that means actually they're going to be older. They're going to get older every year on average, because, like, there's like, you're way behind and you're going to fall farther behind. So, I mean, and literally I've been dealing with this exact issue at that client for like a dozen years now. And just like last week, I sent Tim an email on my team saying, like, hooray, can you believe it? We have just 3 Intel machines left at this client. And, like, there's 2 machines that top out at Ventura. So that's like, please, you have to replace them this year. Because that's kind of my policy, is like, if Apple's not supporting the Mac OS version that they will run with security updates, it's 100% officially out of support at that point. So we try to get ahead of that, to your point, but that's like our line in the sand here. So I'm looking at that, like they're finally in compliance as of the last like couple of years, which in compliance means like you're barely hanging on with machines that will just about run, the oldest supported Mac OS version. So we're getting there, but they have, again, just 3 Intel machines left out of their fleet of, 20 something Macs. So I usually say, in business, 3 to 5 years, but realistically, no one replaces a Mac after 3 years unless they are really like pushing it pretty hard to its limit, where they're going to really benefit from the performance or from the new processor upgrade or more memory or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Jerry? What's your thinking on that?
I say PCs are for business and Macs are for the home. That's what I say. No, actually, I had something valuable to contribute here. I was thinking like there's 2 barometers, right? The age of the machine, or is it capable of running a supporting operating system? And I think for me, that's where I draw the line in the sand. If we can only run Monterey, we're done here. We can't support this. We can't, like, even for a home user, it just doesn't seem like you're putting them at risk, and you're putting I don't want to be over dramatic, and people pound their fist on the table and they say, well, if we support this machine and then we get brought into court, we're going to have to justify why we told you to use this machine doesn't have security updates. But I think, just common sense. Like, I don't care what you're doing on the internet. If you're just simply buying something on Amazon, because people, a lot of the residential clients, as you know, Joe, will throw up their hands and go, well, I don't do online banking.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, Jackson. You need to have a operating system that's supported. So that's kind of like where I draw the line in the sand. And I hear what you're saying, Sam, that even if they were supported and they were able to run Ventura, the next year they're going to age out anyway. So why not sort of get them on the bandwagon? But I think, if you had to draw the sharp point of the spear for the client is, it's not supported. It's not secure. I can't recommend it. Therefore, I can't support it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll mention something that Mike Kingsley in the chat brought up too, is not only making the recommendation, but letting them know what your stance is ahead of time. So not like at the 6-year mark, say, hey, by the way, these are aging out. Got to replace them right now. And then that just sets them to scramble anyway. So you got to communicate it ahead of time. So thanks to Mike Kingsley for saying that, because that's a big piece of it as well, is just communicating with the client, letting them know so that they're not in a scramble.
Keep on banging that drum.
Yeah.
So would you take on a client? Let's say I came to you, Joe, and I had a fleet of Macs that only supported Monterey, or you, Sam, and I want to work with you, but we don't really have it in our budget to buy any new computers now, but we have an office of 6, including my computer. Can you guys help us out? What would you say?
I mean, if you like, if they don't have the budget to buy
with this haircut,
Macs, if they had that haircut, then
not only
do they not have the budget for new Macs or haircuts.
Wait, before you answer that, Joe, does where I am tonight, does that constitute as being on a rooftop in Spain? I just realized.
Apparently it does. How did we miss the joke? This is the perfect callback opportunity. Wow. Oh man, you're literally on a rooftop in Spain.
Set us up and we just waffled it. We
totally. Oh man. Okay. So let's say they come to you with 6 Macs, all aging out, basically, that they won't run anything newer than Monterey. So, and I'm going to explain why that's my logic there, but that to me is unsupportable. And if they don't have the budget for new Macs to replace those, then they probably don't have the budget to pay for my services. I mean, they're going to have probably lots of other technical debt. It's not just that, we want to get, we want to get a rate that, we've for our value. It's also that, they probably need to invest in time spent, as well as maybe like services and resources, maybe other hardware, to get backups in place, have a password manager in place. Like if they're running this old hardware, they're probably not up to speed with any of this stuff, and they're probably not going to have the budget to actually get there. But Sam, do you want to answer? And then I want to just zoom out a little bit and give my pitch to clients as to why this is important.
It's actually interesting because we have a client that we started off that way just a couple of years ago. They had 14 computers and they were almost all of them just totally old, like ridiculously old. and they had just branched off of a larger company, I guess, and they need IT support. Anyway, we kind of told them, but we didn't lay down any specific like wording in an agreement or anything. But we said, listen, we'll work with you, but these have to be replaced. I mean, this is just atrocious kind of a thing. And they were super nice about it. So, which is why that's also a piece of it. Like personality wise, they were pretty cool and understanding, and said, listen, we know what we have to do. We just haven't done it. Budget is tight, like Joe had mentioned, or Jerry, actually, you had mentioned about budgeting. And we kind of walked in treading lightly, and they thankfully over the course of 2 years spread out the purchases and we got them shifted over. They had some intels as well. And it worked out. And they're one of my favorite clients, actually, because they're super nice and awesome. But it was really concerning when you pick up a client like that, be like, are they going to have the money to spend like, I don't know, 20 grand on all these computers? And you just don't know with computers of that age already, you know, they haven't been spending. So what do they have to spend now?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it worked out. So it was all right.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, and and I've given clients a long leash in the past similarly. And in my case, I mean, it's hard to make that call when you don't work with them already. But like, so for a new client, I give you a lot of credit for like taking the leap with them and actually it working out. But I have clients where I certainly have given them years where, it's like, come on, we really need to do this. Oh, I might be selling the business. Oh, I don't know if I want to, and there's like these, they're just keep delaying. And eventually they've gotten there, including the one I mentioned at the beginning and another, similar size, maybe about half that size, where they had a bunch of Intel, like old iMacs, similar thing. They topped out at an unsupportable Mac OS, rotational hard drives, 21.5-inch Macs with the 2.5-inch, rotational drives, which are even slower. I mean, they're just so slow. And so part of the issue with those machines, and this was as of, as recently as probably 2 or 3 years ago, we were like spending time supporting them, and thankfully we bill for our time, so we're not including unlimited time or whatever, like a magic number type of thing, but we were getting paid for it. And so part of our leverage there was to say, look, you're paying us for all this extra time to literally wait for something to just crawl across the screen because your drive is so slow. I'm connecting to your user and they've got 5 apps open. It's already like a dead, halt here because they just can't, it's got limited RAM. The hard drive is really slow. I mean, all these issues are causing like performance issues in terms of like both the Mac and the employee. And now I'm coming in to troubleshoot stuff. I'm opening apps and I'm waiting. It's bouncing. It's bouncing. It's bouncing. It's bouncing. It's bouncing. It stops bouncing, but it's still not open. I'm waiting, and it's like, I'm just watching the clock. Like I'm getting paid for this, and you're paying me instead of paying Apple for new hardware. And, fine, pay me, that's great. But like, that's not really a good situation for me because I could be doing something much more productive right now for you or a different client, that's more valuable, like work that would drive me less crazy than sitting here waiting for this thing to respond just so I can, like shoehorn a solution into this Mac. And then maybe you get your employee back to work. I mean, it's literally, I could show you examples of like where something should have taken 15 minutes and it's like an hour charge, it's just, that's inefficient, clearly. That's one of my pitches to the client. The other thing is like on the topic of security, I think Jerry brought up earlier, where, we don't want to support a Mac OS version that Apple doesn't support. And the reason there is because, if Apple's not supporting it, if it's not the current version or the, recent 2 versions before that, then it's not getting security updates. And what that typically means is like, let's say, Apple finds, or someone, more often a third party finds a security vulnerability in Safari or, some Mac OS feature. And these could be frameworks as low level as like the audio processing framework or something that maybe hasn't been touched in a few years, right? So somebody figures out that, processing a maliciously crafted image, leads to like a buffer overrun, which then gives them whatever, secure, like privacy breach, or maybe they have now root access to the system. All bad things, right?
Can I be Mr. Customer for a second?
Yeah.
Speak English. Speak English.
Okay. So hackers out there will find a vulnerability in the Mac OS. They will either notify Apple as part of like a bug bounty program, or Apple will find out that this is being exploited and they'll fix it. in the current Mac OS version, and they'll make that fix in the last 2 versions as well. And then, following industry standard best practices, they will document like basically what the issue was and what they fixed. So we fixed the, graphic processing, like, we fixed, Spotlight or Quick Look or something like that, and we patched this issue. So now, which is part of the industry's standard best practices, like for sharing, like what gets fixed. Hackers now have a blueprint to finding that exploit in a prior version. Not only maybe has it been exploited in the current version, but Apple's actually published a blueprint to target this framework, and maybe you'll figure out. And, furthermore, a hacker can like decompile something. I'm not speaking English anymore. Now I'm speaking the, tech lingo.
Off the rails.
But they'll basically like decompile like the framework from the previous version and then like compare it to the, the one from that they fixed. And they'll say, oh, I see, they fixed, this subroutine or whatever. So the hacker can go in and attempt to exploit that, and probably more often than not exploit that in the prior versions, which have not been patched. So as time goes on, you are more and more vulnerable the longer you run an unpatched, unsupported Mac OS version. So then, they might ask me, well, how likely is that to happen in the real world? And I'll say, well, I've never really seen it actually, but it does happen. Like I've heard examples of it. And I know there are known vulnerabilities in older Mac OS versions. Like there was a big one, I think in like Catalina, I want to say, like when that was no longer supported. And I'm not sure if there's one in Monterey. I mean, I'm sure there are several, but anyway, the point is like, do you want to be using the easier to exploit version of Mac OS, where if something does happen, it can probably affect you? Or do you want to stay up to date with the one that Apple is pretty sure they've solved all the security vulnerabilities? Like it's already, dangerous enough out there. Like why give yourself extra risk by running an older Mac OS version?
I'll be Mr. Customer again. All right. So we've been talking for 45 minutes. Are you going to charge me for this time?
Yeah, I mean, you could have bought a Mac 45 minutes ago.
Jerry,
right?
No.
Yeah, if you're Jerry, no, right? You will not charge. You probably give them money for that interaction.
Sam, I want to hear what you've got to say, but I do have a possible workaround to deal with a potential client like this as you go forward.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Sam, go ahead.
Well, no, I had nothing on the subject necessarily. I just, yeah, I'll defer to Jerry after this, but no, seriously, I just, even though my big thing though is like, I guess it differs in, residential as well as business, but like, I do want to have a level playing field of the latest OS, even if an older one is supported. I kind of don't like, and that could, I kind of don't like to see a business. If I see 10 computers, I see like 7 on Sequoia, 2 on Sonoma, and 1 on Monterey. It drives me nuts. So
that's a great point. That's a great point.
Level playing field is important, because also just, making sure that when you go to system settings, it's the same thing when you direct someone else, if you're remote supporting with them or something like that.
If we provide you instructions to your employees, do you want to make it consistent across the board? Feature parity across apps. That's the other one that people often respond to. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little extra work, because if you're using Jamf or Adigy or something like that, you've got to go into separate profiles for each one of these different versions of the operating system. So it's a little extra work for you behind the scenes, where it's not, you're just updating one policy for that one client. But I was thinking, if this client came to me, and just as we were talking here, you might want to produce some basic hold harmless letter, where you'll say like, okay, we agree to work with you, and you don't even have to put, for 12 months or whatever the case may be, but we've acknowledged to you that these computers are out of date, they're not supported anymore, so just sign on the dotted line here that you're going to hold us harmless if any transgression should pass across these computers. So it really emphasizes to them that this is serious business. We're not trying to sell something. That's the thing too. I say to clients is, I don't have a horse in this race. I don't get credit from Apple if I sell you anything. I don't have a warehouse full of these things that I'm trying to sell you. I want you to go to the store and go nuts.
Unless or go through
Yeah, Ubiquity equipment is another story. You do
right.
have a warehouse full of it.
And that seems to have an impact too. It's like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. And by the way, here's a piece of paper that tells you that I'm taking this seriously and that you really should too. And so then you've opened up, a pathway for you two to work together with that understanding. And maybe you could throw in there, we have a gentleman's agreement or a gentle ladies agreement that in the next 12 to 18 months, the fleet will be replaced or something like that. Or we'll look into an Apple lease in the next 3 months.
Just a quick question on the horse in the race about, their purchases. And I'm just came about as you mentioned it, Jerry. Like, do your customers, if you have a custom store portal with them, do your customers in general, either one of you, know that you can make a commission off those? Or like, is it one of those things that you set it up and they have no idea, but you make some bucks behind the scenes?
Joe, I know you've got a couple. I have none. So I'll have you address that, Joe.
Yeah, I go through the steps to set it up in a lot of cases where I think a client will buy several Macs per year. Again, some of my clients are 20 to 30, employees. And so there's a little bit of turnover. They stay up to date. Others are, maybe 5 Macs total, but I know that they're going to need to replace like 3 this year or something. So I'll set it up because, the incentive that I oftentimes will tell the client is this helps me ensure that you're going to get the right system because I can spec it for you. You'll have the exact proposal and you could either call Apple, you could place it right online, you could go to the store, you have your kind of marching orders there. Whereas if I just give you a list of specs and I say, it's really important that you have, 512 gig storage, you go to the Apple store and they're going to sell you what they have in stock because they're going to look at you like just a residential, customer and an opportunity to make a sale and get you out the door. And so that's the kind of the reasoning I will often give them. I don't mention that I make a small commission because frankly, it's not worth the time that I spend to set up the store, follow up with the client, send the recommendation, all that stuff. I mean, it just doesn't cover the time. So it's like, it's nice that Apple includes it, but that's not really a big motivation for me. Yeah. It's more so just to make sure they get the right outcome.
No, it makes sense. I was just thinking about it even recently. Also, just if you ever part ways with a client, what happens to that connection if you don't disconnect it? Like it's not something they would ever think about, really.
No.
So you could still potentially be making money from a client after they leave you.
I think Apple reviews that periodically. I've gotten, contacted before from Apple, like, hey, like, how's this client doing? Or like, I'll have one drop off the list and I'll, contact Apple and say, hey, we're actually now trying to make a purchase and I don't have access to the store. And, oh, whoops, there was a disconnect. Okay, put you back in. And I don't know if that's, again, like it lapsed or something because they didn't make a purchase, or I don't know what else might have happened. But so I don't know if it's deliberate or not. But yeah, those are good points. Jerry, you gave a lot of good material there. So one thing you mentioned was not only the fact that you're saying to them, hey, I don't stand to make money from this, because a lot of times it's a residential client or it's a business that hasn't been enrolled in the custom store program. It's not about me moving computers and selling hardware and that kind of thing. Not only is it not like benefiting me, but in fact, in many cases, like I said earlier, it's actually benefiting me. Like I'm making more money supporting the slow hardware because I bill hourly, So I'll let them know that like this is not to my benefit necessarily. Like this is to your benefit to get you the right hardware that's going to, have productivity benefits for your employees. It's going to be, safer and more secure. You're going to have all the latest features, et cetera. And it's also, probably costing you money to have me supporting the old hardware. Further to that, I've actually in one case, and I mentioned this probably on a Patreon show, I had a client where, this went on for years and it was just egregious. Like the fact that he was making his employees work on this hardware that was so old. I'm just thinking like, how do you suffer through this workday with this hardware? It was like to that level, spinning again, like iMacs with rotational drives that are like half, almost full or whatever. And so eventually, because I could get no traction with this client, you don't even understand how great it's going to be for you to get a new computer, let alone all these other, these several employees, could not make any progress. Finally, I just said, all right, so if you want me to keep supporting this hardware that I keep saying I can't support, I'm going to tack on an unsupported hardware fee. So you have, 6 Macs that are unsupported, $20 a Mac. $120 a month for me to support this old hardware. And it's like this, it's like for my suffering, it's for my pain and suffering and like just waiting for progress bars. So that went on for a number of months. And I'm like, all right, I mean, I don't know what else I can do, but, turn that screw a little bit and say, now it's going to cost even more to support this old hardware. But eventually, he finally replaced the hardware. We got to a point where it was all supported and I took that fee off. So I think you need the carrot and the stick. It's like, it's going to be great. You're going to, benefit from having, more security, and your employees are going to benefit from like job, quality of life and productivity. That's the carrot, and then the stick is like, and it's going to start costing you real money every month. You don't want to waste your money just spending it on this monthly fee for unsupported hardware. Why not put that money into the new hardware and everybody benefits? So I think you sometimes need both approaches.
The carrot and the stick. Yeah. Well, I think that that client probably paid for at least one computer over the course of like a year and a half with your unsupported fees.
Exactly.
Crazy.
I just, in some cases, I wish I'd added that on sooner, but it works, again, to Jerry's point earlier about, there needs to be little incentives for them to do the right thing. And so one of those is, well, let them know you're really serious. So I had a similar example with this similar client where it wasn't about new hardware, but it was like, how many times can I note in the review of the clients and email them and tell them on the phone that you have no backups. Like you could lose data because you have no backups. And eventually just putting this in writing and asking for a simple reply with, I agree. So it went through my ticketing system. I wrote it out saying like, I understand, we've recommended backups. You've continually declined to, just go ahead and sign up for backups. And you might lose data, and we've advised you of this. If you want to decline this recommendation, just reply back, I agree. And
I agree.
Coincidentally, like a couple weeks later, I had the client on the phone for something unrelated, and he said, and what else do we have for you? Well, we got the backup thing, we got this and that, these open tickets. And he said, well, whatever you need to do, just give me a recap and we'll move forward on that. So it was like this incentive of like, I don't want to say I agree to no backups. Like, they don't want to go through with this, like legally binding, from their perspective things.
Yeah.
So they do the right thing finally.
Good for them.
Yeah.
What you got, Jerry? You had something to bring up tonight.
Yeah, a very interesting thing happened to me. I got a call from a client who has one computer, the owner of the business who's on our managed service plan. And we still support the store. The store's got Ubiquity equipment, and they buy computers for their people to use. And the requirements for these computers are very low in terms of their performance. They're just doing basic stuff. So they just go off and they buy them. They may be buying them through our reseller that we work with, an Apple reseller, but I don't even know because I haven't talked to him in quite a while. So the computer shows up and they email me to say, so-and-so, she's having trouble signing up for iCloud. So I remote in, I'll cut right to the chase. And so we try to use her existing email account. She never had an iPhone before. She's got an Android phone. Excuse me. She never had an iCloud account. She has an Android phone. There's nobody under the auspices of this business at PretendCo that has used her name. So it's like Alyssa at pretendco.com. And we're trying to sign into iCloud for the very first time, set up an account. She puts in her cell phone number, and it says that we can't register this identity at this time. I forget the exact address, but it kicked back. So I was thinking like, oh, okay, you've got a VoIP phone. And she said, no, I've got, I'm using Verizon or something like that. So I knew that wasn't it. So I said, well, okay, let's set up an iCloud address for you. So it was like Alyssa at iCloud.com. And then now I've remoted in, and that did not work. It just wouldn't take the number. So then we went to, I always have trouble with this URL. What is it? id.apple.com? Identity.apple.com. What is it?
Account.apple.com.
Yeah. So we sign in there. We try to establish the account there. We got a little bit further where she got a code, not through her phone that we plugged in the phone number to, but to the email address. So we plugged in this 6-digit two-factor code, and it wouldn't accept it. It said that the code was invalid. So we did this a couple of times. So then I called the Apple ACN secret squirrel phone number, and we got a guy on the phone, seemed to sort of be completely aware of the situation. Once I laid it out to him, he's like, okay, let me check a few things. And he comes back and he says to us, did you buy, is this enrolled in Apple Business Manager? Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, we're buying it through I didn't really know the details. I said, in the past, we've bought through an Apple reseller who I would imagine enrolls us in Apple Business Manager, but because we're not my client is not using an MDM with us, I really don't have any knowledge of that Apple Business Manager account. Mm-hmm. And he just threw that out there, just sort of, like he might have seen this before. So he said, hold on. So he comes back, works some magic. She goes back to Alyssa at pretendco.com, puts in the phone number. We get the code. Boom, she's in. And he's like, yeah, and she's like, oh, thank you. And he's like, okay, thank you. You guys are all set now, right? And I go, wait, hold on a second.
Yeah. What's the magic?
What happened, dude? Yeah.
Before you go,
yeah.
You mentioned earlier about Apple Business Manager. Could you theorize that might have been the reason why? And he said, well, I can't theorize, but we have a special tool here that for some reason it was being blocked, and he used his air quotes special tool to allow it to pass through. And I told her, after we got off the phone, I said, this is a real edge case. I mean, I've done a lot of these, and you guys haven't seen this before, right?
No, I haven't seen that. I was going to throw to Mr. Apple here because it's a, Apple, business manager thing. Like, I don't know, something to do with requiring a managed Apple ID, or is there something along those lines? Like, why would it be?
But I'm confused because didn't you go to a computer and try and set it up? Regardless of the new device. Wait, was this a new phone or a new computer?
It was a new computer, and she wanted to. The reason why I'm talking about the phone is we were using this Android phone to get the two-factor authentication, but it wouldn't accept the number. Initially, it wouldn't accept the number. And until I remoted into the new computer, went to appleid.apple.com or whatever, and logged in and tried to set up the account there. Then we were able to push out a two-factor authentication code. It wouldn't be received on phone, but it would be received via email.
That's kooky.
I know, really.
I'm going to throw a new layer to this. I have no idea if it's related, but I've experienced this in the past where I couldn't receive a text message from someone, and the issue that as best I could tell, this was an Android phone. So they're sending an SMS text message to me, right, to my iPhone.
There's your problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's your problem, right? But SMS is bad, but it should work in theory. So why is it just not working? Like, they're sending it, they get no, response, like it wasn't sent, but it didn't arrive. The best I could tell is Android has a feature where I think you can kind of specify like your default SMS basically. And it could either be like in the case of the iPhone, your SMS comes to the Messages app. That's it. I don't know if that's changed recently with these EU regulations and things, but on Android, you could maybe specify like a default, SMS handler type thing. And also, of course, there are third-party ones that use this kind of thing, including WhatsApp. And WhatsApp, and then there was another one. It might have been like Signal, but I think it might have been Telegram actually. So there's a few message handlers, whatever. And I'm not sure if on Android, one in particular that this person had been using might have at one point been set as like a default message handler. I see. So it kind of like registered their SMS number with that service. And the layer of complication might have been that I was also like using that service, but like this was just an SMS message, so it wouldn't come to me by through that service, through Telegram or whatever it was. It should just come in by SMS. And I actually don't remember if it was that my response didn't come through to them or their message to me didn't come through, but it was like one side or the other. And that was the best I could speculate, was at some point their number got registered where it's like trying to route my response to an app that they no longer use or something like that. This also
Yeah.
happens when you like switch from iPhone to Android and like, you know, I don't know, your number previously was registered for iMessage. So my phone thinks you're using iMessage, but you've switched to Android. You're not looking at your iMessages, but my iPhone knows you're using iMessage somewhere, you know, and so it might still be delivering your messages that way. I think they handle that better now, but those are some layers with the SMS receipt. But Apple Business Manager, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Android, are those
Yeah, and he
related?
didn't like he almost regretted saying that to me because
Yeah.
he knew there was like like wait a minute, this guy's, you know, he got one of my clues or whatever. But no, she got the
Right.
code even via email and it didn't work. And what if
I
it
see.
I understand what you're saying, Joe, and that's a really great point. But how could his special tool fix her phone if that was the case? So I don't think that was exactly it, but that could be another cause.
And that wasn't like a new phone number for her or anything, right?
No. She was a new employee, but you know, I don't, you know, I don't think there was anything specifically wrong with the phone.
Super
So that
weird.
that was a weird one.
Super secret squirrel special tool. That's the
I really want to know what that
title.
was.
I know.
It's bothering me.
It's like allow iCloud to work. You know, it's like they click a button or something.
That's the
like,
special tool.
Right.
yeah, right.
So Joe, do we have enough time for you to get into your story, your late breaking story about spam and that sort of thing, or do you need about a little bit longer time to do that?
I don't know, Jerry. That's a tough question. You know me, how I can, you know, spin a yarn.
Spin a
as they
yarn.
say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to save that for a Patreon show, or are you thinking that it would be a good public
I
show?
can get into it. I mean, it's probably not. It's not a super long story.
Okay.
Famous last words. So yeah. So the issue. So because actually this is interesting. I'd love to get the public's kind of feedback on this. So we've probably all seen this situation where like somebody's email is suddenly getting inundated with unwanted, you know, email. So it's often the type of thing where it's like, thanks for signing up for our like free stuff newsletter, you know, and like here's your first free, you know, item here. We need your confirmation to sign you up for this, you know, perfectly legitimate, deals email or whatever. Another example is, you've created an account, you know, click here to verify your email, whatever. So any number of like semi-legitimate, you know, like in theory, legitimate services. So emails from like contact forms online, thanks for submitting your information, you know, that kind of thing, along with password reset emails. In fact, in this case, to accounts that, as far as we know, never existed. So this client calls and says, I think my email has been hacked. I'm getting all this, you know, junk mail, whatever. And it's coming in like, you know, 10 per minute or whatever. Also like there was fraud on my Amex card. So, okay, let's dive in. So we get into it.
Email service provider. I know the answers to this question, but
Microsoft
let's tell our listeners.
365. Microsoft 365, thankfully, because at least you can get someone who in theory might have dealt with something like this before in terms of support. So the issue that I've seen in the past is, like, let's say somebody wants to scam you. They want to go in and they have access to your email, so they're going to send you a password reset to get into your Dropbox account via your email account, or they're going to get in, they're going to receive the code so they can log in and, get into your bank account or whatever it is. So they want to get into your email, but they don't want you to see, as you're reading your email that comes in, they don't want you to see that, Dropbox says you've changed your account password. If this wasn't you, click here. Or, you've changed your email address. If you didn't mean to do this, click here, right? Those types of emails. The attacker wants to mask their activities. They want to create a lot of noise in your email inbox to, hide their track, to cover their tracks, right? And hide what they're really doing. A lot of times if they have access to your email account already, they don't need to generate noise. They just go in and create a little helpful rule that says any emails from Dropbox, just put in the conversation history folder. Like, I don't know what that folder is. No one does, but like they use that existing folder to, put those emails in so that the client will never see them, or just delete the email or whatever it is, put it in junk. So again, that's if they have access to your email, and let's say they can create that rule. If they don't have access to your email, but they do have access to your Dropbox, let's say, right? let me use a better example. This will happen with your Facebook account. So they'll figure out that you're using Apple123 for your Facebook password. Jerry, you better change your password now. So you're using Apple123 for your Facebook password, and they log in. They just use credential stuffing, and they get into your account because it's on a list of known passwords, right? Now they're into your Facebook account. They're not in your email. What they want to do is they want to change your password so you can't get in. Great. Okay. But it's still hooked up to your email account, so you can reset their password. So then what they want to do is change your email address. And of course, Facebook's going to send an email to you when that happens, right? So they don't want you to see any of these emails from Facebook saying you changed your password, you changed your email address. Congratulations. You configured two-factor authentication to a Russian phone number. Sounds good to everyone, right? So they will, if they don't have access to your email, they will mask their activity by generating a lot of noise in your inbox because they can't filter out those Facebook emails. They need to make sure that you're just not going to see them because there's just too much crap is arriving in your inbox. So I'm assuming they use automated tools to sign up your email account for, again, any number of like online newsletters and contact forms and, password resets, like whatever, just again, to generate noise. So it's essentially a distributed denial of service attack. It's a DDoS attack on your email inbox because now you can't use email because you're getting one message for every, one good message for every 1,000, bad messages. So the signal to noise is way too low. You can't see the good email for the bad email. And so now you're not seeing what's happening in real time, and the hacker is able to, move quickly enough to do whatever scam they want to do, and you won't notice while it's happening. That's where I've seen this issue before, right? Where suddenly a bunch of unwanted emails are arriving in the inbox, and they think their email's been hacked, but actually it's a symptom typically that your email has not been hacked, because if your email was hacked, they would just go in there and like hide all the messages that they don't want you to see, again, using rules and filters and whatever. So this is happening, and I'm seeing 10 emails arrive per minute, maybe more. It's in, it's new. You've signed newsletter subscription, email contact, a bunch of different subject lines, right? All different things, contact forms, password resets, whatever. Now it's in all different languages. So I'm going in and I'm asking you guys, and I'm talking to Tim, and I'm thinking like, how do we handle this type of issue? And meanwhile, I'm creating rules. So Jerry gave me some really helpful like initial steps, like create a rule in Microsoft, Outlook Online, to filter for subject line contains, newsletter subscription, email confirmation, all this kind of stuff. And so that was a good starting point, but I ended up having to go through the incoming email and find a bunch of additional, subject lines and variations that I could include in this rule to then automatically delete those emails, leaving only the, in theory, valid email. Of course, you don't want to be overly, you don't want to like broaden that search too much and match too many emails, because maybe there's a valid, a vendor that you use that's sending you one of these emails like, we need you to confirm that, you want to change your email account. I don't want to delete that email. I want to see that email. So I can't use the word confirm or confirmation or account because, so I'm having to be subtle in this email rule that I'm creating. So it's reducing the noise, but the noise is still coming in. Now I know the word for newsletter in Russian, Greek, Latvian, like, I don't even, some of these languages, I'm like, that's a language? I don't know. So, and it's really hard to parse if you don't know the syntax. I'm like, I don't, sometimes you can tell in the language, it's like, thank you for like something, and it's like registering whatever. In other languages, it's just like, Japanese, forget it. I'm like, how many of these characters do I need to select to like figure out which one means newsletter, or whatever. So that was hopeless. Like, yeah. Because and thankfully in Outlook on the web, Microsoft has a built-in translate to English button. So I could translate to English and I could say, okay, this is talking about a newsletter, right? So then I would try to figure out again, which of these words in the subject line means newsletter, and then, copy and paste that word in whatever language, I don't even care what language it is, into Microsoft's rule. So this was me, just like it's a cat and mouse game, as they say, because more and more stuff's coming in. Meanwhile, I'm talking to Microsoft about it. So I have to tell them, what's happening. I had a great agent who was, very earnest in her trying to support me. She called me back when I requested, 2 hours later to talk about an update. She had researched if it's still happening, what should we do? So she had some guidelines, but we're checking things like SMTP auth. Her notes say, we highly recommend turning SMTP off for the organization. And I'm like, really? So I'm like, why do you want to turn off SMTP auth? Then
Really?
what do you want to say, Sam? Yeah, exactly. I'm like, really?
No, I don't have anything to say except really.
Yeah. So this is what I was saying. I'm like, could you tell me why you want me to turn off SMTP auth in this, to help anything to do with this problem? If anything, I feel like that should definitely be on. I don't really know what it does, like I'm scrambling to think like how this applies logically, but like it really seems like it should be on because it's on by default. So she says, okay, so she's like, probably texting on the side or whatever. And she comes back and she goes, yeah, actually, I found another article that says it's highly recommended for security to leave that on. So I'm glad you asked. Let's leave it on. I'm like,
Oh,
great,
man.
cool. Like, so then, and then she's like, we're going to check your DKIM settings. I'm like, okay, fine. So DKIM is enabled. I'm like, so we're going to all these directions here. DKIM should protect like my client when they send email that the receiver knows it's really from them or probably from them and not from some like third party SMTP server. I don't know how that's affecting, like we're getting emails from all kinds of legitimate sources. Like I wanted to say, like, you understand the problem, right? Like we talked about this.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't seem relevant. So I basically made that point and said, could you please go back and do a little more research, escalate to tier 2, like come back to me with something more relevant to this issue. Meanwhile, I'm just still scrambling to fine tune these rules. Okay. So in the meantime, as I'm on the phone with Microsoft and I'm giving them examples, one of the things she asked me to do was report as junk, like an example, 5 to 7 of these. I gave them like 10 or 11, contact form, newsletter sign up, all the examples I gave earlier. So then you go into Defender and you go to the user submitted, spam, right? And then you like select those and submit to Microsoft. So then they do an investigation. So they come back and they're like, no threat found, no threat found, no threat. Yeah, they're not, it's not a threat. It's
right.
It's not I never said it was a threat, right? Like, okay, no threat found. One of them was a threat. And they're like, well, this can be because after the fact, it was weaponized. I'm like, that's great. Like it's irrelevant that it's a threat or not a threat. The point is these are examples of this attack that's going on. That's, I don't know if you want to call it a threat or not, but it's a denial of service. My user can't use your email service right now. A couple of them come back as like bulk mail, so Microsoft will give you these results. So I'm going in, so I can still chip away at it by doing that, but she's leading me down the path of spam. You can set the spam filter to strict. So only allow to reach your inbox the allowed domains that you've, put on the allowed list or the safe senders list or whatever, and people in the contacts. Well, this person doesn't have contacts on Microsoft on their email service. Tell me if this has ever happened to you guys, because there's like 5 or 10 people in this company and they use a single account for their shared contacts. Just the best way to get it on all the devices in their case. So they don't have local contacts under his, particular email account. So I explain that and I say, is there a way you can see this working? So anyway, so we're going down all these different roads, but basically it's just validating my thinking. Like, what do you do in this situation? I couldn't see a solution other than playing this cat and mouse game and just trying to hope that it goes away. So as I said earlier, where this thing happens is when they're trying to cover their tracks for a specific targeted attack. Like, I'm going to try to take over this person's Facebook account. I don't want them to see the emails from Facebook. I'm going to inundate them with spam by clicking a few buttons, paying probably $10 to some like, hacker reseller service thing that's going to sign them up for a bunch of email newsletters for a period of an hour or two, and then it's going to go away. So that's what I've typically seen. I've never seen this happen for like now it's over 24 hours. And so I didn't know what to do. So then there's another weird clue to this. So the initial thing was we noticed a bunch of email coming in, and I got an alert from Amex that there was a big charge from Best Buy, because Amex very helpfully says who the reseller is, right?
And you threw this out to Sam and I, and what did I text you back
what did Jerry
right
say?
away?
So Jerry said, this sounds like a disgruntled employee. I thought,
yeah,
wow, I did not even think of that. That's really interesting. It could definitely be.
You got to think like a criminal.
Exactly. The call the call could be coming from inside the office, and so it's like very interesting, Jerry. You have that criminal mind that I sometimes need to tap into there. So I thought to myself, wow, that's okay. I didn't think of that. So I float the idea to the client on one of these calls, and they said, wow, that's really interesting. We let someone go a little while ago, and we just found out yesterday something about they're unhappy with something, and I won't get into the details here, but interesting. Suffice to say, they were like, well, I don't want to share. I don't want to share any more details.
You can't tell them it was a workman's comp.
No, I don't want to share any more. No, I don't want to share any more details.
Jerry already. Oh my God. Joe's trying to tell you not to.
Let's just say their name was Homer S. No, that's too obvious. H. Simpson. Let's go with that. Okay. So
remember
if anyone gets that reference,
Joe when Jerry said he doesn't have to edit on the
I know. So anyway, and it's fine. Whatever. But the point is, like, there were a couple clues where the client was like, ding, 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 So, and I said, listen, I don't recommend that you act on this information. Like, this is purely speculative, but like,
from my friend Jerry.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm going to tell
criminal.
Jerry this happened, but like, yeah, but if you notice anything else strange that has some kind of resonance here, like, let me know. Part of the issue was, so we go I search for all emails from Best Buy, and I see a Best Buy email from like 30 minutes after the first spam email. So it looks like they're trying to cover the tracks of this Best Buy email, and it got a little out of hand. I don't know. The Best Buy email confirms that they placed an order using the client's Best Buy account. And so, like, logged in his legitimate Best Buy account, placed an order for shipping to the very city where the client has their office. And like, what's the scam here? Why would, and this was part of the clue probably, it's like, why would some random hacker, halfway around the world order a computer to to another address in the same city as where the client actually is? Maybe it's because it's the address on file, I'm thinking, because we couldn't actually see the order details because we couldn't log into the Best Buy account. The hacker was able to, but we were not able to for whatever reason. So as I'm on with Microsoft, this is very lucky. Coincidentally, I'm going through and marking things as junk and giving them details about different emails. And I see one from Best Buy. Your order's been delivered. So this is the next day, after the order was placed. Your order's been delivered. So I go in and I can see the address this time where it had been delivered, which is, again, not the client office address, but in the same city. So I notify the client, they call the police say, we're going to come to your office and interview you. The client is like, can you just go to the address where the thing got delivered? Like, I'll meet you there kind of thing. Like, don't come here and like take 2 hours. Like, it's been delivered, And it's not about the fraud because they had already marked the Amex card as needing to be replaced, fraudulent. They're not going to be on the hook for that money. But don't you think the police would want to recover a multi-$1,000 computer that, Best Buy is basically losing money on, or Amex, or somebody's losing money on this? So then as I'm on the phone with the client, they're telling me, they called the police and they're waiting to hear back, and everyone in the office is like on the edge of their seat. The client has me on the phone. She goes outside to and she says, I'm telling you, there's cops all up and down the street. I'm going to just go talk. So she goes and talks to a cop. And now, so I get off the phone. I don't know what the conclusion was basically, but she was like, her next move was to go grab a cop and be like, are you busy? Can you go to this address with me? So that's all going on, and maybe more evidence that it is related to a possible disgruntled ex-employee who had some information, just enough to be harmful. But why would they, create such a nuisance for so long? That's what I want to know. Still, it's going on, still.
I mean, maybe you mentioned the words got out of hand. Like, maybe their intent was to bury something and they just didn't know how severe it would be. That sounds like an amateur hacker right there. I know.
Yeah, good point.
My theory was it was just to mess them up even further. Let's order a computer and send it somewhere in Norwalk or that area.
Yeah. Right.
I'm sorry, Joe.
It got delivered.
More details.
It must have been. Oh, can you take?
Yeah. Did you look up that address on Google?
Yo, do you want to do it live and just screen share and just show people where to find it?
When you showed me what the address was, did you Google that? Did you?
Yeah, no, I did. It's not. They said it's not a good neighborhood kind of thing. So
it's like a Chick-fil-A, right?
I didn't get into details. So now you can, now we have all you're going to triangulate my client name pretty soon from all these details.
Oh, calm
So,
down. Nobody
no,
listens to this show anyway.
I just don't want to get caught up in like,
That's a good
anyway.
line for
Okay.
Major
So
League.
Yeah.
let's err on the side of sharing less information about the client on the public show. So that's where
Next
we're
time.
at. We don't know. But the thing is the the emails, like you said, are still coming in. So the amateur hacker thing could be just that they went to some like hacker website where you can just pay some money to like
buy a
have
bot.
the bot just starts submitting everything. And it's
Yeah.
like, do you want to pay $10 for an hour, or,
$10 for a week,
$20 for 2 hours, or $25? Yeah, exactly. And it's like
Yeah.
some special deal. And they just said like, let's opt for the like most annoying thing that we could possibly do. Yeah. So
Goodness. So
I don't know, man.
Am I to understand that you left it that she was like going to talk to a cop? Like basically
running down
that
the
was
street,
Yeah.
chasing
So
down
I have
a
no
guy.
update. I called right before the show to say like, here's the latest update, and I'm going to be
We're
busy.
recording. I want to get this on the
recording a
recording.
podcast. I
With
sent the
as much
YouTube
detail
link. It's like, I promise you, we won't give any details about your company, but if you want to listen live, yeah. No, but so I'll let you know. But my main question is what to do. I mean, this is a distributed denial of service attack. It seems to me someone could bring down the U.S. economy by paying like a few $100s, and targeting some like specific email addresses in companies that rely on email. And like, I've always been wondering about this. I've just been lucky, but
Yeah. Wow.
what to do?
wow, right. I need the
be.
exciting conclusion as soon as you have it.
I think it's probably going to die out. I think I'll probably get, more filters on the list. Maybe it's the kind of thing where we crowdsource like a list of, every common subject line, because again, you don't want to like encompass all and risk missing important emails now or in the future. What if this keeps happening and they have to keep the filter in place for a week or more? You're going to miss some emails. Yeah.
On the newsletters, like, is it like 2 undisclosed recipients, or is it like just to that user, or is there anything there like that would signify it as bulk? That
I mean, in some cases, it's like, thank you for contacting us through this online form. And then it includes, the information they submitted. And it's like, and I thought, oh, maybe it's like the name is like just a mess. It's like somebody just hammered the keyboard, and the last name, same thing. So I'm like, maybe that's just a placeholder and they submitted that. No, it's different every single time. There's no from address that's consistent because it's from any number of different services. Yeah, I couldn't find anything that was like that these things had in common. And I want to say like the client, even they're coming up with ideas too. And I'm like, our tools are just too limited, but basically like, can you block any email unless we've ever exchanged an email with them in the past? Like, well, in theory, that's a great solution logically, but I don't know of a way to do that specifically. Can you like,
is that
again,
rule, though?
only what's that?
I thought that was a rule in Outlook.
I mean, I asked Microsoft how to do that, but maybe it's in some advanced level of Defender or something like that.
I guess one other thing is like, if it does continue, I mean, we're hoping it'll just die off, but like, I guess you could import those centralized contacts into his contacts as a means of
worst case, because it's starting to let up a little bit, like they're coming in less and less. So I'm thinking we're managing it with this list we've created, and I can continue to add more. But that was my other idea, is like, even if I have to just say, look, it's imperfect, but I'm going to just like populate an initial, like, all I need is the name and email, or just emails or whatever, to populate his contacts, to say contacts only. And then I can just tell him the user that's affected, just add people to your contacts. If you're not, if you're sure you need to get them, even for your sent messages, I could maybe even make a rule for outgoing messages in mail to add to your contacts or something. There may be a creative way to do that for any new mail that's going out where you're expecting a reply. I mean, we can get creative, but again, this is the kind of thing I thought Microsoft would say, hey, I've got a list of steps to do in this case. Like, let's go down the list. But they were like, we've never seen this before, is like how it sounded, So I was surprised.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of crazy things happen to people on Reddit. I was thinking, do a Reddit search and see if you could find somebody who this exact same thing happened to.
Right.
Probably could.
And see what the feedback is. That might be a good rabbit hole to go down for a little while.
Yeah. And also in the Slack, obviously, the Mac admin Slack, I could try
Right.
there too.
I know we're over time. You I could end with an upbeat story or a
Please
funny
do.
story
Please
that happened
do.
to me. All right. I'll truncate this. I'll make it as brief as possible. So we have a residential client and she's having trouble with her TV. So I'm like, okay, she's on my plan. So I said, all right, I'll go out there. So I go out there, charge her for an hour. She's using a Roku. The Roku she used was bad. She's got an old junky TV. She had another Roku. I got that working. And she wants to be able to watch live channels. And she says, I don't want any of this Xfinity Comcast stuff. I said, well, you need to subscribe to the TV version to get live TV. There's just no two ways about it. You don't have to use their control box. I don't want this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And she had a very old Xfinity control box. So she calls me a few days later and she said, it's not working. I can't get any live channels. Nothing seems to work. So I said, look, you're going to have to schedule an appointment with an Xfinity. And what I'll do, and this is, this champions my methodology for making money. I will come out there for free.
there it
and
is.
Be your technical liaison. Because you know how I'd love to do that, guys, right?
We're going to have to stage another intervention for Jerry on the Patreon show. Stay tuned.
Fell off the wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Jerry, you'll make up for it in volume, though. Every free appointment,
exactly.
you'll make up for it in volume. Yeah.
So I go out there, and it's windy. It's a windy day. So we go out there, and I'm driving, and she's texting like the guy's on his way, and I'm like, text me when he's on his way. So he's here, and then I'm getting these other texts. He's gonna leave, and so I call over there, and I said, look, put him on the phone. And she said, he doesn't want to pick up my phone. He doesn't want to talk on my phone. And I said, what? So for some reason, this guy said, oh, I'm not allowed to talk on a customer's phone. He didn't want to pick up her phone and talk to me.
Can't touch the phone or
so
something.
I said, please have him stay there. I'm almost there. And it was almost like it's like a 45-minute drive from my house, and I'm going there for free, right?
Yeah.
So I arrive, the truck's still there. And I told her to open up the gate. Now, this is not one of the fancy pants gated houses like you guys accommodate in Fairfield County, but she's got a gate because she's got dogs. So I try to go in the gate, and the gate kind of like stops halfway, doesn't let my car in. So I park my car. I go through the narrow opening because the gate's partially open.
The gate's closing behind you. It's like an Indiana Jones thing. You're like running through. Yeah.
So I realized I might be dealing with a loose cannon here. So I can't go in there guns a-blazing, right? Sure. With this guy. Like I'm figuring okay, as my wife might say, I'm at an 11. I don't want to be at 11. I want to be at around a 2 or a 3. Okay. Dial it down, Jerry. All right. So I take a deep breath, and I'm speaking in hushed tones, right? Because I'm seriously, I'm speaking softly. And I said, well, I think ideally, our client would like these boxes changed. And the guy goes, well, I'm not set up to do that. I don't have the boxes on the truck. And she's going to have to schedule another appointment and talk to the sales department, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I said, well, okay. He said, but I fixed everything for her and it's working. I said, well, I don't deny that it's not working, but what's happening is when she's watching live TV, all of a sudden it'll cut out. Right. And he looks at her. He's like to verify like what I'm saying is the truth, right? She's like, yeah, that's what happens. That's what happens. Yeah. So I'm like, so I said, could you check the DMARC for us? Could you? Well, I don't even know where that is. I said, neither do I, really. Yeah. So we find the DMARC, and he puts his technician stuff on it, and he's getting weird amplitude or whatever. He's getting some interference. Mm-hmm. So he said, problem's on the pole. We're not allowed to climb the pole over 30 miles an hour, 40 miles, whatever it was.
Winds,
the winds, yeah. So we get him to climb the pole, because I'm still in hushed tones. And I'm like,
yeah. Your wife would be proud.
So he throws the ladder up there. He goes up there. He tests the line. He comes back down. It's indecisive. But while he's up on the pole, I said to the client, are you going to grease him a little bit for this? Do you normally, all right. I said, do you normally grease somebody for doing this? Right. So she goes, oh yeah, I'm going to take care of him.
Take the money you would have given to me, give it to him.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, you're not paying me or saving money, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
so he brings the ladder down, and he's like, here's my card. So he starts to walk away and she goes, "Oh, sir." And she reaches into, she had something from her purse and I see her give him a 10. And I'm like, oh, this is like typical senior citizen. I'm going to give you $10. And this is like me handing over like $1,000 to you because I was born in the 30s or the 40s. And, you know, $10 is a lot of money these days.
Back then. Yeah.
Something.
Now it'll buy an egg sandwich, right?
Yeah. And now we're like pissing the guy off. To add insult to injury, we made him go up the pole.
Yeah. Right.
And so she goes back in the house. She goes, "Oh, thank you for being here. You wouldn't have gone up the pole if you weren't here." And I'm like, so she's got his card and we're going to see how it goes. I haven't heard from her. It's been a week, but I walk up to the guy. She's now out of the line of sight. And I said to him, "Look," and I reach in my pocket. I take out a 20. I said, "Look, give me the 10. You know, because she's a good client, right? She's on my managed service.
Sam, are you taking notes for our intervention?
Jerry is spending money now.
Jerry's now spending his own money.
I know we're over time, but I told you I told you this would be
not only
a good
not getting money,
well
but losing money on the story. Yeah,
the listeners are getting extra, right? So, so I said, "Look, here, give me the 10. Here's a 20." And he goes, "Oh, we're not supposed to take money anyway." But he gladly put the 10 in his pocket. So he reaches into his pocket, he pulls it out. It's $100 bill. So I said to him, "Nice. Still want to do the trade? Because I'd be up for that." And he was like, he was no nonsense. He didn't get the joke or he didn't find it funny. But he's like, "Oh, it's pretty good." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's pretty good. It's really good. It's really better than my 20.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So the joke was on me. I just had to laugh. And it was so funny. I had to call Joe and we did a secret show at it, didn't we, Joe?
Yeah, we did.
Again with this.
Why this is even a better telling.
Why admit it to me? I don't want to know.
This is even a better telling though. This is good, better the second time.
It's like, here I am rolling my eyes thinking, oh, the senior citizen greased the guy $10 like it was the whole world. And instead she had, and it was intentional. I don't think she gave him the 100 by mistake and thought it was a 10. That's what she gave him. You know?
Yeah.
So
next time we're going to charge her.
Yeah. Next time, take the 100 for yourself.
Oh,
yeah. At least charge.
You guys
something.
don't know how business works. You got to take a few tips from me next time.
Oh man. All right, everybody. Stay tuned for next week to another great episode of Command Control Power, where you too can learn how business works from Jerry, who refuses to charge anybody for anything. He makes up for it in volume. And he makes sure the other guy gets paid. Oh man, that's